Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are diving into one of the most common challenges students face on the digital SAT, subject-verb agreement questions. If you are like many students, you might find yourself second guessing when the subject and verb don't seem to agree in number, especially when long phrases, tricky wording, or complicated sentence structures are involved. But don't worry, in this video, we'll break down exactly how to spot the key subject in even the most complicated sentences, match it correctly with the verb, and avoid common pitfalls. I'm going to walk you through a foolproof strategy that will help you quickly and confidently tackle these questions so you won't waste time. Alright, let's jump into it and start mastering those subject verb agreement questions. The first thing that we need to know is a basic rule that is being followed when it comes to this particular topic. There is a basic rule, and all the rules that we're going to learn about further is going to be around this basic rule that we are going to learn about. Whenever a subject is singular, the verb has to be singular. This is a compulsion, guys. Whenever we are dealing with a singular subject, the verb that is used for that subject is always going to be singular. Let's look at an example. A nickel earned is a nickel saved. So this is the subject, this is the verb. Because this is singular in form, we have used a singular form verb that is. Let's look at the next sentence. The young giraffe charms everyone in the room. So what are we talking about? We are talking about one giraffe. Now that's singular. So the verb that is being used for this singular subject is also singular, that is charms. When it comes to verbs, we basically add an s to create a singular form. For example, cat eats. Cats eat. Now, when it comes to noun, what do? We add an s to create a plural form, right? When we added s to cat, we have a plural form of cat, many cats. But when it comes to verbs, we had an s with the singular form that is eats, which is making this verb singular. And when it comes to a plural subject, we remove the s from the verb, which makes this verb plural verb. Now this works opposite. Like in a noun, we add an s to create a plural form. But when it comes to a verb, we add an s to create a singular form of the verb. Remember this. Now let's look at the next basic rule. The plural subject will always take a plural verb. So singular subject takes a singular verb. Plural subject takes a plural verb. As simple as that. Let's look at an example. Owls are not a suitable choice of pet for beginners. So owls is the subject that's plural over here. So the verb that we are using for owls is also plural, that is are. This is also plural. The stars shine brightly tonight. Now stars is like more than stars, so this is plural form. It's more than one star that we're talking about. And the verb is shine. We don't have an s over here, which means this is also a plural form of verb. Now the next set of rules that we're going to learn is all going to be surrounded with this basic rule. Now the challenge that we face when it comes to this particular type is the identification of the singular or plural form of a subject, or the identification of a subject in a sentence. This is what we are supposed to learn. Let's look at the first rule. Collective nouns such as jury, team are typically treated as a singular entity, and therefore they take singular verbs. So what are collective nouns? Basically, this is a name given to a group of people or things coming together. There are a lot of people coming together, a lot of animals or things, whatever you want to call it. They come together and one name is given to all of them together, and that's called as a collective noun. For example, jury. Now this definitely consists of more than one person, correct? But collectively we have given them a name that is called as jury, and this is considered as a singular subject or singular noun, which will be followed by a singular verb. Let's look at examples over here. The council has made its final ruling. So council over here is again a collective noun, right? One label given to a group of people. So the verb that is being used for it is also singular. Has is singular in form. What is the plural form of has? That would be have. Let's look at the next sentence. The orchestra is practicing for their next concert. Orchestra is again a collective noun. The verb that is being used for is also singular, that is. The fleet of ships is ready to sail. Now what are we talking about? Fleet, collection of ships, like more than one ship coming together is called as a fleet. Now what kind of a verb we have used with it is that is singular in form. The crowd of fans is growing restless. Now, crowd is again more than one person, right? But because we are giving them one name, that's a collective noun, and the verb that we are using for the subject crowd is singular, that is. This is how we basically need to identify how a collective noun is followed by a singular verb. Let's look at the next rule. Gerunds take singular verbs. Now, before we understand how they take singular verbs, let's first of all know what gerunds are. These are basically the ing ending words, which are acting as the noun or a subject of a sentence. Now, there's a misconception around these words that end with ing. We think that this is always going to be a verb. That's not the case, guys. Now, how do I know that an ing ending word is a subject or a noun or a verb of the sentence? For example, look at this sentence. Jogging is a beneficial exercise. Now, let's say she is jogging, right? Now, what is the difference between the two sentences? Jogging is basically the first word of the sentence. There is no helping verb before it. There is no is, am, are, was, were, whatever. Correct? But when it comes to this sentence, there is a helping verb before it, that is. Whenever you find a helping verb before an ing word, only in that case we can call this as a verb. Because it has a helping verb before it, this is a verb. And because here we don't have a helping verb before it, this is not a verb, this is a gerund, which is acting as the noun of a sentence. I hope you understood the differentiation between an ing ending word that can be a noun and an ing ending word that can be a verb. Now, in this case, what is the rule? The rule is that whenever you find an ing ending word acting as a noun, the verb is always going to be singular. For example, jogging is the subject of the sentence, the noun of the sentence ending with ing. It is carrying a singular verb with it. Next sentence, painting. Painting is again, it's the noun of the sentence ending with ing. It's carrying a singular verb, helps with it. What is the plural form of helps? It's basically you remove the s, it becomes plural. But in this case, I do require the s because painting is the noun and that's singular. Gerund is always going to be singular. Writing with clarity is a valuable skill. Now, writing is again, we don't have a helping verb before it, and this is ending with ing, which means this is the noun of the sentence. And what is the verb? That's is. So, subject and verb, again, the subject is singular, so the verb is also singular. The last sentence, singing in front of an audience takes confidence. Singing is the noun or the gerund that's starting the sentence. And what is the verb that we are using for this? Takes. This is the singular form of take. So this rule basically says that whenever a gerund or ing ending word is acting as a noun, it will always take a singular verb. Let's go ahead and see the rule 3. Now we're going to talk about indefinite pronouns. Now, what are these indefinite pronouns? They basically are the words like each, everyone, nobody, somebody, everything, nothing, someone. These pronouns will always take a singular verb. Now, if you want, you can probably pause the video and make a note of these pronouns. They will always take a singular verb. Let's look at examples over here. Now, this is an incorrect sentence. Each of the students were given a copy of the new syllabus. Because there is a mention of each over here, the verb will never be plural. What is the singular form of were? Was. Each of the students was given a copy. Irrespective of the fact that we are talking about students, which is plural over here, because there's a mention of each, we will always take a singular verb. Let's look at more sentences. Everyone is, right? So because it has everyone in this sentence, the verb for it will be is, that is singular. Everything, again, the mention of everything means the verb has to be singular, that is seems. Addition of an s in the verb means it's a singular verb. Someone, again, someone is the subject, so the verb is going to be singular again. So has is a singular form of verb. Nobody is, again, that's an indefinite pronoun which requires a singular verb. So the verb is again wants. There's an addition of s, which means this verb is singular in form. It is surprising that nobody. So nobody is again an indefinite pronoun which will always take a singular verb. So is used for it. This is a singular verb. So remember these indefinite pronouns which will always take a singular verb. Each, everyone, nobody, somebody, everything, nothing, and someone. Now let's look at the rule 4. Now here we're going to talk about some indefinite pronouns which can be singular or plural. It really depends on what we are talking about. What are those pronouns? All, any, most, none, and some. These pronouns can carry any form of verb depending on what we are talking about. Let's look at examples to understand how do we know which verb to use when these pronouns come into the picture. Now it says all of the cake. Cake is singular, which means my verb is also going to be singular. What do we understand from this? Now, whatever these pronouns carry is going to decide what the verb form is going to be. Now, in this sentence, the indefinite pronoun all was carrying the subject cake, which is singular, so the verb was also singular. All of the children. Now, all is carrying children, which is plural in form, so the verb is also plural. Has any of the milk been spilled? Now, any of the milk, any is carrying milk, which is singular, so we have used the singular form of verb for it, that is has. Have any of the students returned their forms? So any is carrying students in this case, which is plural in form, so the verb is also plural, that is have. Most of the information was accurate, so most is carrying this, which is singular in form, information is singular in form, so the verb is also singular, that is was. Most of the spectators. Now in this case, what is the word most carrying? What is the pronoun most carrying? It's carrying a plural word, that is spectators. Thus our verb is also plural, that is were. Some of the water. What is some carrying over here? Water, which is singular, so has, which is again a singular form of verb. Some of the participants. Now in this case, some is carrying a plural word, that is participants, which means the verb is also going to be plural. So again, guys, if you want, you can pause the video and make a note of these pronouns, all, any, most, none, and some, which basically the mention of these pronouns tell us that we have to see what they are carrying in order to understand the singular plural form of the verb that we require. Now let's look at the rule 5. Now some sentences can be very tricky in order to understand what the subject really is in a sentence. The subject and the verb, they can be very far from each other. Right? If they are very far from each other, it means you have some interrupting phrases or prepositional phrases in between. So we have to basically cut all that extra information out and identify what is the subject in order to know what kind of a verb we are supposed to use. Is the verb going to be singular or plural? Will totally depend on the kind of subject that is being used. And here in such sentences, it becomes a little tricky to identify what the subject is. But we always have a trick for it. Let's look at a sentence. The reduction in the use of fossil fuels by industries and individuals is or are still not receiving enough attention. So this is what we have to decide. What do we want? Do we want an is or do we want to go for are? Now that depends on what the subject is. Is the subject singular or plural? Now in this case, if you ask a question, now this is a trick, guys. You should always ask a question. What is still not receiving enough attention? What is the answer for this question? Are we talking about individuals not receiving enough attention? Are we talking about industries not receiving enough attention? Are we talking about fossil fuels not receiving enough attention? No, right? It's simply the reduction. The reduction is not receiving enough attention, which is singular in form. So we should be picking up is as our answer over here. Now, what do we have in between the subject and the verb over here? What is all this information? These are all basically prepositional phrases. What is a preposition? Preposition are basically the words that tell us about the location of something. Words like on, off, these are some words that you've often seen and they tell us about the location of something, right? Now here, what is a prepositional phrase called as? A phrase that is starting with a preposition, as simple as that. For example, in is a preposition, in the use is a prepositional phrase because I have another preposition coming up, of. So of fossil fuels is another prepositional phrase, and then I have another preposition by industries and individuals is another prepositional phrase. Whenever you come across these prepositional phrases, know that your subject is always before the prepositional phrases. The subject of a sentence can never belong somewhere in between a prepositional phrase. It will always be before a prepositional phrase. So all of this information is nothing but extra or some interrupting phrase that's been used in between the subject and the verb pair. Right? So remember this rule, guys. Remove all the extra information, non-essential clauses, the prepositional phrases to know what the subject is. You can also simply create a question. You can ask yourself, what is still not receiving enough attention, and find a logical answer to it. Now, it was logical to say that the reduction did not receive enough attention. Now, these are the two ways that you can really come to your subject by removing all that extra stuff in between the subject and the verb pair. Let's look at rule 6. Now, sometimes the subject and verb pair can also be divided or separated because of the usage of these phrases. What are they? They are along with, together with, as well as, besides, or not. So they basically, it looks like you're adding more information. You're adding more people to the sentence. But they are simply adding some extra people or extra information or extra things in the sentence. So what the verb is going to be will really not depend on what these phrases are carrying along with them. Let's look at an example. The actor, along with the reporters, is arriving soon. Now, this is the correct sentence, even though it says that actor is coming with reporters and they all are going to arrive soon, even though it says that the verb is always going to be singular, because along with the reporters is not the attention of the sentence. There's just some extra people coming along with them. The main part of the sentence is that the actor is arriving soon. That is what the important part is. So what the verb form should be over here, it really depends on what is before this phrase. So again, you can make a note of these phrases along with, together with, as well as, besides, or not. Whatever is given before it is going to be the subject, and the form of that subject is going to decide which form of verb do you require. Do you require a singular verb or a plural verb? Let's look at more examples. The cat together with its kittens. So together with, this is the phrase that we are talked about in here. So I'm going to remove this. What is the subject in that case? Cat, which is singular, so the verb is also singular. Similarly, fear as well as excitement. So I know as well as is going to carry something which I don't want to consider. So I have removed this and I've got fear as my subject, and that singular in form, so the verb is also singular. Sarah besides Jane and Molly. So I know besides is going to carry something that's extra. So I will remove this from the sentence. The subject will be before it. Sarah is one person, so I've used a singular verb for it, that is has. The captain, not his teammates. So I know again not is going to carry something that's irrelevant or not required in the sentence. And my subject is going to be before it. So captain is singular in form. So is my verb, that is. Correct? So I hope you understood this particular rule. Let's move on to the next rule now. Using either or neither nor. So when you have these phrases in a sentence, how do you know which form of verb to use? The verb needs to be singular or plural depending on the subject. But when it comes to these phrases, you're supposed to focus on what comes after or and what comes after nor. Whatever subject they are carrying along with it, like after or nor, is going to decide what the form of the verb should be. For example, either the teacher or the students. So I know I have to focus on the information after or, right, which is students, which means this is plural. This will tell me if my verb is going to be plural or not. Because after or I have a plural form of subject, my verb is also going to be plural, that is have. Let's look at next sentence. Either the students or the teacher. So what do I have after or? I have something singular, teacher. So my verb is also going to be singular, that is has. Now let's look at the next sentence. Neither Maya nor her colleagues. So what do I have after nor? Colleagues. Now that's plural in form. So my verb is also going to be plural, that is are. Neither her colleagues nor Maya. So now I have a singular form after nor, that is Maya. So my verb is also going to be singular in form, right? So when it comes to either or, neither nor, whatever is there after either or neither doesn't matter. You have to really focus on what's given after or nor, right? That information is going to tell you what the form of your verb should be. Let's move on to the next rule now. Sentences where the subject follows the verb. So till now we saw sentences where the subject came first and then the verb. But there are some inverted sentences as well that you might find on the test, where the verb comes first and the subject comes later. In that case, it can be a little tricky to identify what the subject is, but again, you have to figure that out logically. For example, there is no milk in the fridge. Now, here, the first thing that I'll do is I'll identify the verb. What is the verb for me? Is the verb. What is not there in the fridge? That's milk. So that has to be the subject of the sentence. So logically, you have to understand what is the point of discussion, what is the main topic of discussion in that sentence, and that main topic is going to be the subject of the sentence. Let's look at the next sentence here. Here are the documents you requested. So identify the verb first. Are is the verb. So what are requested? That's the question. What are requested? That should be the main topic of the sentence. Documents are requested. So that's the subject, which is plural in form. So is my verb. There were hundreds of people at the concert. So again, identify your verb first. Were is the verb. What were there at the concert? Like, what were there? Hundreds of people. Now, hundreds is going to be my subject because what did we learn earlier? That a prepositional phrase will never consist of your subject. It will always, the subject will always be mentioned before a prepositional phrase. So, hundreds is the subject over here, which is plural. So is my verb, were plural. Hiding under the bed was a small puppy. Now again, identify your verb first. Was is the verb. What was hiding under the bed? That was a small puppy. So this is singular and so is my verb. Correct? So whenever it comes to these kind of inverted sentences, go ahead and identify your verb first and then figure out what the subject is. In any case, whether it's an inverted sentence or not, my suggestion would be always identify your verb first, question yourself, and then figure out your subject. You can just follow this process for all the subject-verb agreement questions. Let's look at the next rule. A number versus the number. When it comes to the mention of a number in a sentence, it will always be plural. But when it comes to the mention of the number in a sentence, it will always be singular. You simply have to remember this rule. A number is always plural. The number is always singular. A number of athletes, see, there's a mention of a number, which means my verb should be plural. So were is plural. The number, so again a mention of the number, which means my verb should be singular because this is singular in form. The number of participants in the race was impressive. So was is singular in form, correctly matching the subject form. Singular verb carries singular subject carries singular verb, plural subject carries plural verb. A number, if you find that as a subject, it means the verb has to be plural because a number is plural. The number is singular, so the verb can also be singular. Now, these are the rules that you have to learn by heart when it comes to subject-verb agreement questions. And go ahead and try and implement these rules in your questions that you take up. My advice would be that you make notes on this particular type. Go ahead and feel free to watch it again if you want to quickly revise all the rules. That's all for now. Thank you so much.